My name is Michael Aday, and I am the archivist at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Photography has always been a part of the history of Great Smoky Mountains. It was a mecca for amateur photographers for as long as photography has been an amateur hobby. But Jim Thompson's images were some of the first professional photographs of the natural wonders in the mountains that were taken. And they really educated not just the people in Washington, D.C. or the people in Nashville, but they educated people all across the country about the natural wonders that could be found in the Great Smoky Mountains. He was a photographer in Knoxville, and he really came to become a professional photographer as a result of a fire in Knoxville. I think they called it the $1 Million Fire. And he was downtown. He captured several images of the fire. They were published in the local paper, and after that his photography business just sort of morphed. He was leaning towards being an architect. He worked with Charles Barber. Jim Thompson was instrumental in helping to establish Great Smoky Mountains National Park. That's how he came to his highest level of prominence. In 1924, the Southern Appalachian Parks Committee was meeting in Asheville, North Carolina to determine where to establish the next national park. And the committee was actually looking at Grandfather Mountain in North Carolina. And Colonel David Chapman, who was head of the Great Smoky Mountain Conservation Association, contacted Jim Thompson, who he knew from the Conservation Association as well as the Smoky Mountain Hiking Club. And he had Jim Thompson load up all of the photographs that he'd taken of the Great Smoky Mountains, put them in his car. He drove them to Asheville, North Carolina, and they filled the hotel meeting room with photos of the Smokies. The committee looked at the images, and they decided that they really should give the Great Smoky Mountains more consideration. So they scheduled a trip down here, hiked up to Mount LeConte. Jim Thompson was along for that hike, and they ultimately made the decision that this was the place to establish the next national park, and it was due in very large part to Jim Thompson's photographs. The Smoky Mountain Hiking Club they were one of the biggest boosters, especially in the 1920s. They were founded in 1924 by Jim Thompson, among others, and their founding members were primarily well-heeled people from Knoxville. And they had the connections within the community in Knoxville and outside of the area to help act as boosters for the park. For example, when people would come down from Nashville, from the state capital or from Washington, and wanted to see the potential that the Smokies had, it was members of the hiking club that arranged their hikes and their tours of the mountains and accompanied them up to LeConte, to various areas of the park that they wouldn't have been able to get to otherwise. They're still an active hiking club. They still manage and organize hikes. They organize work parties, and they'll go in and they'll help clean up, for example, the Smoky Mountain hiking cabin in Greenbrier. They'll go in and they'll help maintain that area. They'll do a yearly cleanup. They do other things. They may still be involved in maintenance of the Appalachian Trail that goes through the park. They're still very active in the area, but it's more of, we don't need boosters for the park anymore because the park's been established. They do help to promote the region and the park as a destination for hiking. Jim Thompson took some of the most amazing images of the natural wonders in the park. He took photos of almost every vista, the early images of Mount LeConte and Alum Cave and the beautiful flora and fauna in the park, and he had a professional photographer's eye for composition. His development and printing was absolutely flawless, and it was these images that people saw in magazines and newspaper articles that were published all across the country that drew people to the national park in its very earliest days. I believe he continued to hike in the park, to photograph. He continued to be an active member of the Smoky Mountain Hiking Club. The iconic images of that dedication in September of 1940 up on Newfound Gap were all taken by Jim Thompson. We do tours in the facility here several times a year, And one of his photos, one of his big panoramas of the dedication ceremony is an image that I always bring out and show to visitors in the building, because it's just such an important, iconic moment in the park's history. Jim Thompson, along with George Massa and Ansel Adams, they all really underscored how important photography is to educate people in the necessity of conservation of natural elements in the Smokies and in the world. We need to see these images, and they need to be shown as close to their natural beauty as they can be with a film camera. And it's without images like that, I think that there would be less focus and perhaps less interest in conservation. "9,000 years of continuous human habitation in the Smokies." So to say that one person in the 20th century was responsible for finding a specific location is a little bit on the ethnocentric side, but he photographed all of the images that people outside the Smokies had not seen before. It wasn't just the natural history that he was photographing. We have photographs that he took of the people who lived in the park at the time of the park's establishment, and those are all extremely important images that connect the human habitation and human existence in the park to the park that we have now. And it helps everyone remember that this isn't just a natural wonder, that it was also a cultural homestead for people over 9,000 years. When the park was first established in the 1930s, there was nothing here. There were very few roads through the park. There were no campsites. There were no campgrounds. There were no visitor centers. So all of that big change really started with the establishment of the Civilian Conservation Corps. They came in and they started building all the roads and trails through the park. They built the visitor center on the Tennessee side, the ranger administrative office on the North Carolina side. So that really sort of kicked off the development in the park. And then it waned during World War II. 1942, all of that development stopped. It didn't really pick up again until the early 1950s. And then it just barreled forward with a vengeance, and we got all of the development that you see here now. And a lot of that development, the really intensive development of the park really only happened over about a 10 or 15 year period. We're sort of dealing with aspects of design and construction that don't really meet the same standards that we need to have today for the number of visitors that we have. So that's an issue that is going to be ongoing as long as the park is going to be the most visited national park in the United States. 14 million some odd people this year. The infrastructure that was developed in the 1940s and 1950s isn't really going to be adequate to the visitation that we have today. The big projects are just going to be to try to maintain the things that we have now. There's a big push for maintaining and restoring a lot of the historic structures in the park. Mingus Mill on the North Carolina side, they've just conducted a historic structure report for that, so we can expect to see a restoration of that in the next few years. The headquarters facility in Gatlinburg, that will be rehabilitated hopefully starting November of 24. Those are going to be the real major activities that we're going to see in the park. We have in the archives, which is what I'm responsible for, we have a large collection of photographs. It's about 4 linear feet of photographic images from Jim Thompson. So in terms of the archives, that's the main repository that we have for Jim Thompson's images. His images are still used today in promoting the national park. If you go to the website for Great Smoky Mountain National Park, he is one of the significant contributors to the establishment of the park. There's a biography, and it talks about his, how important he was in helping to get the park founded. And the We're fortunate that the vistas and the natural beauty hasn't changed since he photographed it. If anything, it's been reverted back to a lot of the pre-logging vistas that we have now. His photos still turn up in publications the Smokies Life puts out. If we're going to do something about a history of one of the mountain communities, a lot of times we'll have images from Jim Thompson's collection that go into those articles. His images are still found online today and, point people to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Had it not been for Jim Thompson's images, we wouldn't have the park that we have today. As I wrap up our discussion, I want to emphasize the impact of Jim's legacy on the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. His journey from Knoxville photographer to instrumental figure in the park's establishment emphasizes passion and dedication. Thompson's photographs not only captured the natural wonders of the Smokies, but also played a pivotal role in educating people across the country about the park's beauty and significance. His involvement with the Southern Appalachian Parks Commission in 1924, where his images swayed the decision in favor of the Smokies as the site of the next national park, is a testament to his vision and influence. As well, the founding of the Smoky Mountain Hiking Club by Thompson and others served as a driving force in promoting the park's cause, both then and now. Their dedication to preserving the park's natural wonders continues to inspire generations. Thompson's images, with their professional composition and flawless execution, drew people to the park in its earliest days and continue to do so today. They serve as a reminder of the importance of conservation and the enduring beauty of nature. As we move on with the task of upholding and preserving the park's infrastructure, it's crucial to keep in mind the predecessors like Thompson. Through his lens, he captured the enchanting views of the Smokies, ensuring its legacy continues. His imprint remains vivid within the archival treasures, resonating deeply with all those who hold this remarkable locale dear to their heart. So the next time you visit the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, take a moment to appreciate the wonderful views it has to offer. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the lens of Jim Thompson, a true pioneer and guardian of the Smokies.